Hello Year 9, welcome to week 4 of our Poetry Fest. So this week we are going to be looking at Elizabethan poetry, and of course the most famous Elizabethan poet and playwright of all time is William Shakespeare, and the poems that he wrote were called sonnets. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at one of his sonnets, and then for Friday's lesson I'm going to put up on Show My Homework another one of his sonnets for you to sort of work through on your own. So this is going to be the culmination, kind of the final putting together of everything that we've looked at so far with poetry. So we're going to look at imagery and metaphors and similes and all those language devices. We're going to look at rhyme scheme and the poem we looked at last week, that romantic poem, Sudden Shower, which you did amazingly on, by the way. Well done. I hope you saw Mr. Wakeling's shout out video. Some of you were just outstanding with your responses. That was a form of sonnet. So we're going to have a look at things like rhyme scheme and structure and the sonnet form, but we'll do most of that on Friday. Today, we're just going to have a think about initially what this particular sonnet means. Okay, so first thing I'm showing you here is a picture of Elizabethan England. So what do you already know about Elizabethan England? So on the top right there's a picture of William Shakespeare scribbling away. We've got a very, very dirty, dusty looking city. Queen Elizabeth I there on the left hand side. She was the one with the bright red hair who was the daughter of Henry VIII. She was kind of infamous for chopping off people's heads if she didn't quite agree with what they were saying. She was a very powerful queen. She succeeded in beating the Spanish Armada, I think 3 times. You probably know more about her reign than I do. Elizabethan England was a time of turmoil. She was a Tudor monarch. England was constantly under attack, under threat. So it was a time when people needed some excitement and some light relief from their day-to-day lives, which is partly why Shakespeare's plays were so popular. But also poetry was really, really popular. The poems we're going to look at, the sonnets, they're all just 14 lines long. Really, really short. And poems were really, really popular. They were like the pop songs of the day. There was no radio and pop music then. And these sonnets were sort of like pop music of the day. So this is the poem we're going to look at. But I've taken out all the vowels. So pause the video, have a go, see if you can put all the missing vowels back in. Pause it now. Okay, have you done it? Have you put the vowels back in? If you have, you've probably realised this is one of the most famous poems ever written. You probably recognise the first line. So let's have a look at it now. It reads, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, where in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee." You might be thinking that makes no sense at all, or you might be thinking, what a beautiful love poem. So let's just, first of all, before we do anything else, let's just have a think about some of the imagery. So the first line is, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Now, this is what I think of when I think of a summer's day. Being at the seaside, it's the most beautiful time of year. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? He actually then goes on to say, no, thou, you are more lovely and more temperate, which is a kind of play on words to do with temperature, but also to do with your temper. So if you are temperate, it means you're you've got a nice temper. You're not short-tempered. You're not cross. So he says, shall I compare you to a summer's day? If you think about writing a love poem, this is a love poem. You might say, oh, you're like the sunshine in my life. And Shakespeare's like, yeah, we've had all those comparisons before. Shall I compare you to a summer's day? No, you're lovelier than a summer's day. He then says what's wrong with summertime. He says, rough winds shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. So actually, you're better than the summertime, because actually we get rough winds, and summer only lasts a short period of time. So no, you're better than that. You're better than a summer's day, because there's no like bad weather metaphorically, and also summer only lasts a short period of time, but you're here forever. He then, if we go back to this picture here of this hot sunshine, does he look too hot in the summer sun? I think he does. Shakespeare does go on to say, sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines. So sometimes the sun, the eye of heaven, the sun is too hot. So he's telling us what's wrong with summer. Sometimes it is too hot, and often his gold complexion is dimmed. So often the sunshine is dimmed, clouds come across. It's not as bright as it could be. And every fair from fair sometimes declines. So everything that's beautiful sort of falls from beauty occasionally, by chance, or nature's changing course untrimmed. So you are better than summer, because there are rough winds in summertime. It doesn't last forever. Sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's not sunny enough, and of course things that are beautiful, if we have a look at that flower, it's beautiful, it's about to bloom, but of course what happens to flowers when they've bloomed? They then wilt and they go over and they die and they look really ugly. So after giving us these 8 lines here, he says, but, and if you remember the previous poem we looked at, but, we love a but in poetry, don't we? Because it shows there is a change. This is where we're getting to the point. Shall I compare you to a summer's day? No, you're better than that. These are all the things that are wrong with summer. Your eternal summer shall not fade. What does he mean by that? Your eternal summer shall not fade. If he's saying that beauty is like a summer's day, he's saying, no, your eternal, everlasting beauty will never fade. Aww. He says, and nor will you lose possession of that fair thou owest. So you won't lose your beauty. And nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines for time thou growest. So even when you get old and you eternal lines, you walk that eternal line towards death. So even when you get old, you're still going to be the most beautiful woman in the world. These last 2 lines. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this. And this gives life to thee. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, how long will it be for men to have the power to breathe or to see with their eyes, mankind? Forever, right? So for as long as we breathe and we see with our eyes, then this is true. So long lives this. This is true. You are beautiful. This is true. And this gives life to thee. This gives you life. So it's almost like there's this painting that's been painted of this beautiful young woman say young, maybe she's not, but a beautiful woman. And he says, your eternal summer will never fade. Even when you grow old and you approach death, you're still going to be beautiful. Nothing can change that fact. It's very romantic. So moving on, we're going to look at this particular aspect of sonnet poetry, and it's quite a fancy sounding word, iambic pentameter. Let me just move my face out of the way. In fact, I might just get rid of my face because I don't really like it. Iambic pentameter, quite a fancy word. I'm sure you've come across it in year 8. I'm sure you've come across it when we've been studying Shakespeare in year 7 and 8. I don't think you've done any this year, have you? Year 9. So, how many syllables are there in each line? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Clap it out if you need to. How many? How many? Shout at the screen. Can't hear you. How many? How many? Yeah. 10 syllables in each line. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf held too short to date. Every single line has 10 syllables, and actually that's why some of these words have an apostrophe here. Dimmed, the way we spell it, is D-I-M-M-E-D, and we pronounce it dimmed. In Shakespeare's time, if the E was there, it would have been pronounced dimmed and untrimmed and oist and growist. But Shakespeare has just got rid of the E and put the apostrophe in there, so it says dimmed, because and often is his gold complexion dimmed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's to make the iambic pentameter work, to give 10 syllables. So Shakespeare had to adjust things to make them fit. If you are completely on the ball today, you might have noticed the rhyme scheme. Day, May, shines, declines, oest, growest, see thee. Temperate and date would have rhymed as well. So it goes day, temperate, May, date, shines, dimmed, declines, trimmed, fade, oest, shade, growest, see thee. Really important rhyme scheme, and we'll have a look at that in more detail on Friday. But the question I'm going to ask you is why Shakespeare chose to do this. But in terms of what iambic pentameter is, yes, it's 10 syllables per line, but it's a bit more than that. And iamb, the I-A-M-B bit of iambic, an iamb is a foot, we call it a foot, and it has 2 syllables, and pentameter means 5, like pentagon or pentangle. So pent means 5. So there are 5 iambs. An iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed one. So the course of true love ne'er, the did run smooth. And we can annotate it with a little dash and a slash like this. Da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Da 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 da. So what I'd like you to do is try and fill in the shorthand for the line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And you can see there I've put each syllable in a different box, because it's not the words that we annotate, it's the syllables. So it goes, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So just have a go at writing that line out and annotating it with a little dash and a slash like that. Da 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 da. Do that now, pause the video, and then when you're ready, move on. Okay, how often did Shakespeare use iambic pentameter? Well, we can see he used it a lot. In all of his sonnet poems he used it, but he also used it in a lot of his plays as well. If you remember doing, I don't know if you've done Macbeth, we might not be doing it till next year. but certainly I think you've done Much Ado About Nothing or The Tempest or Midsummer Night's Dream. We would have had a look at some Shakespeare. Hamlet, if you do A-level, we might do Hamlet. But let's see, how often did he use iambic pentameter? Here we go. But woe is me, you are so sick of late, so far from cheer and from your former state, that I distrust you, yet though I distrust, this comfort you, my lord, is nothing must. Ooh. So in some of his plays, some of the characters speak in iambic pentameter. And this is another one of his sonnets, Sonnet 130. All the sonnets just have numbers. They're not very imaginatively named. But this is one of my favourite sonnets. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. So the complete opposite to the one we're looking at. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are done. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. So he used this iambic pentameter an awful lot of the time. So my question to you today is why? Why did Shakespeare do this? It's actually a very difficult thing to do, to write a poem completely using iambic pentameter. Now, I'd like you to do a bit of research to find out why he wrote an iambic pentameter. There are a couple of reasons that academics have come up with as to why they think he's done it. Please have a go at writing a response. If you want to email it to me, that would be lovely. And on Friday's lesson, I'm going to give you a different sonnet that we can look at and completely pull apart and look at all the imagery and the rhyme scheme and the form of the sonnet itself. So I hope that's been helpful today. Have a good day today and tomorrow, and I will see you again on Friday.